said earlier. There's something I forgot to say that's very important that I'm just going to shove in here. There's this talk about whether or not Google is biasing search.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm glad you're bringing this up.
This is super important.
Let's really do this.
Okay.
Yeah.
We should have done this in the first part.
Yeah.
My bad.
All right.
Google is biasing search. And the way in which they're able to say we don't bias search is how they bias search. So people need to look up ML fairness, machine learning fairness. Google has released a video, and they talk about their need to unbias search. That's how the bias is coming in, is that Google is acting, and I think I said this in a tweet, as an incompetent ophthalmologist. You have a very mild case, let's say, of astigmatism or myopia. And Google says, oh my God, you're suffering from some terrible nearsightedness, and your eyeballs are all misshapen. Here, we're going to give you the craziest, thickest glasses you can imagine. Now, you're blind as a bat when you're putting those on. But from their perspective, they're helping you unbias your bias problem.
Can you just, for people that haven't got this, can you explain why they think unbiasing makes sense?
Sure. It is definitely true that physics, let's say, used to be a much more European-dominated male activity. Okay?
It just is.
It was. Now, it is less so now, but it is still very often dominated by men who are fair of hue, right? Their perspective is, well, that's a bias because in the past, that's what physicists looked like. So if you do an image search, we should be correcting for that bias. So we're going to show you Neil deGrasse Tyson, we're going to show you Stefan Alexander or James Gates. And so, you know, they're showing you African Americans and then maybe, you know, Shirley, what's her name? Shirley Jackson, a black female. And so suddenly you're saying, well, wow, this is really crazy. I'm doing the search on physicists and I'm seeing all black faces or something like this. And so what they're doing is that they're claiming to undo latency bias, which is the data hasn't caught up to the world that will be where things are much more equal. And so we've just fit you with the prescription. But you're looking at this and saying, wow, you're really biasing your data in order to have a social justice agenda. And so whatever's going on with Donald Trump, he's not saying the magic words. The question isn't to Google, are you biasing your data? The question to Google is, are you unbiasing your data? Tell me how you're unbiasing your data. And the phrase that pays is ML fairness. I should also say that anybody who knows engineers within YouTube and Google and all of these things knows that some of them are very unhappy. And some of those very unhappy engineers are talking about all of the ways that they're being forced to degrade the product and to privilege certain sources. Like I've seen a list of rankings of various news sources as to how authoritative they should be. And so no surprise, very liberal institutional media gets very high rankings. And so from their perspective, no, this has nothing to do with politics. It just has to do with biasing authoritative sources. Well,
that has everything to do with politics.
Well, the fact that you think it's authoritative, please just open this up so the rest of us can toggle these switches. Because if you're going to tell me, I mean, I know that a lot of things in the New York Times happen to be true, but I also know that it has a very strong ideological bias at the moment that's getting worse. And so I don't feel the same way about privileging the New York Times. I think this is something else that I want to talk about. There are no authoritative sources that we can use as baseline at the moment. And it's a little bit like having a dollar-denominated fund at a point when like the dollar is falling or rising rapidly relative to everything else. If you are referencing yourself, like Wikipedia says, we accept authoritative sources, and then there's some activist that gets into one of the sources that they consider authoritative, and then Wikipedia says, okay, well, we have to print this because it occurred in an authoritative source. That's why the danger of letting the Sarah Zhangs of the world in their activist role is because we now don't know what an authoritative source is. I would say that there are no authoritative sources of an institutional nature at the moment because all of the institutions are scrambling. And quite frankly, this is the one thing that keeps me up at night. And the whole IDW concept was an answer to the question, from where will we reboot when this madness is over? Like, it's not going to be from departments in universities that have been taken over by activism or news organs or political parties. It's going to be from individuals. And I think that the thing that is most authoritative right now are the individuals with a lot of surface area who are pretty trustworthy.